Sky Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. Hey, everybody, we got a great guest with us tonight, and I've been trying to get this guy on the show for a long, long time now. He has finally conceded to my wishes to have him on and, and said, okay, quit putting me in arm locks and threatening me and sending people after me. I'll be on your show. I'll be on your show. Stop it already. And so we've got not only the main man from Rocky Mountain Sasquatch organization here with us. This guy also survived a trek with Survivor Man. He went out with Survivor Man and he survived it. And they went looking for Bigfoot too. So even more extra danger than the usual starvation and freeze to death trek with Survivor Man. So with no further ado, because this guy shouldn't really need that much of an introduction, he is the man in the Rocky Mountains when it comes to looking for Sasquatch. This is Kelly Shaw from Rocky Mountain Sasquatch Organization. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Hi, Duke. It's a pleasure to be on World Bigfoot Radio.
It's a blast. We tried to record this show once already and we had terrible problems and it didn't record properly. And of course, it's horrifying because we just had a blast and we talked for like 4 hours and it was just one of the greatest chats ever. So now we're going to try and remember all the cool stuff we talked about and do it over again. So bear with us.
And damn good thing it's our favorite subject.
Yeah, no kidding, right? I don't mind retreading all this material again. Yeah, and where we started out last time was you talked about your introduction to it, which was that from the time you were a little kid, you knew this was a real deal because your dad had had an encounter with him.
Yeah, I've had several family members have encounters. The first I recall was my grandfather telling me about his Mount St. Helens Bigfoot encounter in the 1930s. My grandfather and 4 of his friends in their early 20s would hike into a remote lake in the Mount St. Helens area, and they would do it towards the fall when the berries were in season, because it was quite a hike in and they didn't bring very much food. They were dependent on getting berries and fish for most of their food while they did this recreational week-long backpacking trip that they did every year. Well, this particular year, the very first morning, my grandfather and one of his friends, they go fishing on the lake that they hike into, and the other 3 guys went off picking berries. Well, my grandfather had caught several really nice trout, and he could smell and sense something. And he just said, god awful smell, and the hair on the back of his neck just sticking up. He felt like he was being watched. He turned around and he was being watched.
Oh,
about 20, 30 feet away at the tree line, 3 Sasquatch standing there watching him. And my grandfather is like 6'2", 6'3". He was a huge man. I'm sure he was really skinny back then though, but he was tall. He said the shortest of the 3 Bigfoot was a couple inches taller than him and twice as wide. Just huge. And then the next one was close to 7 foot, the other one close to 8 foot. They're all standing there watching him, and his fright or flight kicked in and he wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. His only way out where he was at is where they were standing, and the other way was to jump into the lake and swim. And so he just contained his fear and his panic and decided, they're just standing there watching me. I'm just going to continue doing what I was doing. So he went back to fishing, cast out there, started fishing, and then it dawned on him. He's like, maybe they're here for my fish. So he grabbed one of them he'd already caught and he threw it back to him and landed about 10 feet in front of him. And the smallest one, which was larger than him, comes running out, grabs it, and takes it back to the group. And then he's like, oh, right on. They're here for my fish. So he throws another one, goes back to fishing, and throws another one. And the same thing, the smallest one goes from the group, comes, grabs it, and takes off. Well, anyway, after he flipped back to throw the 4th fish, they were gone. So they each got a fish, and I guess they were happy because they left. And then that's when he grabbed all his fishing gear and he tore off around the lake and found his other buddy that was fishing and starting to tell him what was going on. We got to get out of here. And they get back to camp, and the three guys that are picking berries, they're there and they're frantic and in a panic, and they want to get the hell out too. They saw 3 Bigfoot, although that term had not been coined.
Right.
None of them knew what they had saw, just these hairy giant wild men. And so out of the 5 of them, only 1 didn't see it, but the way everybody was describing and reacting, he wanted out of there too. So they grabbed all their gear, got out of there, and never to return. They changed their annual backpacking trip to somewhere else.
2 questions that come to mind. First of all, the other guys had seen a group of 3 of them, same ones. Was the description the same?
The general consensus between my grandfather and his friends is it was probably the same 3. And as rare as Bigfoot is, I doubt that there was 2 groups of 3 running around.
Right. In that small an area, it would make more sense that it would be the same group than that it wouldn't. And the other thing, just a simple observation, your grandpa had balls of steel. He doesn't know what the hell these things are. They're standing right there that close to him, and he's like, I'm going to keep fishing.
Yeah, he just, they hadn't left the safety of the tree line. And so he just felt like, hey, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, because he had nothing else to do unless he wanted to swim. It was the only way out. And then, 39 years goes by, or whatever it is, 37 years. And when the Patterson-Gimlin footage come out, then my granddad and his friends he was with, they all are like, yes, that is what we saw that day, but we saw 3 of them. Right. So that's pretty cool. So they finally had a name to put on it. And of course, my grandfather would go to the libraries and try and figure out what he saw. And that's when he started picking up on the Native American stories about these creatures in the Pacific Northwest and stuff. So he started getting an idea what he saw before the phrase Bigfoot was coined. So that I used to just prod him when I was a little kid. I think the first time I heard that was when I was about 8 years old, and I used to poke and prod him to tell me that story time and time again as I grew up, and that got me interested in Bigfoot. And I kind of wanted to go search for the creature even as a little kid and get a picture of him. As a matter of fact, that motivated me to start buying cameras at a very young age. And when we were kids, they were all on film, and it was expensive to put the film in your camera, get it developed, and you would get like 8 to 12 opportunities. So whenever we would go camping and stuff, I always made sure I had 4 or 5 shots in case I saw the thing, which I never did. But
but just in case you were ready.
I live in the Rocky Mountains, and I always thought growing up, especially with my dad's dill and the Patterson-Gimlin footage, I always thought that I was going to have to go to the Pacific Northwest when I grew up to search for Bigfoot. And then I started seeing and hearing about on the news in the newspaper all the sightings in the Rocky Mountains and the Wasatch Front. And I started realizing that Bigfoot is all over the place, not just the Pacific Northwest. And so when I became a driving teenager, young adult, I started camping a couple of times a year in Bigfoot sighting locations. And, I wouldn't tell my girlfriends or my wife when I got married, or my kids, that's what was going on. And that was kind of a hobby of mine, to go in those places, camp, and look around and see if I could see or hear anything. And the funny thing is, now that I've got this channel that I've had for like 10, 11 years, whatever it is, my daughter has called me out. She's like, you took us to Tony's Grove. You took us to Franklin Basin. There's Bigfoot there. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. And she's like, why didn't you say anything? And I was just like, I didn't want you guys scared of the woods or the forest. I just made sure to let you guys know that there was bears and not to leave the camp area unless you let me know, and to go in pairs and everything. But yeah, she kind of felt duped. I was taking her to places that this monster lived without telling her when she was a youngster.
Well, thankfully nothing happened. She didn't have to get scared by that. That was really. So who else was it in your family that saw one? Your dad see one too, or just your grandpa?
My dad has saw the creature twice in his life, and one of them was a group sighting, the whole family, and then
Wow.
the other one was him and one of my uncles. But when they were all kids, my granddad was raising the family when they were all young elementary school kids in Idaho, out near Mountain Home, Idaho. And my grandpa bought or leased a gold claim in the mountains near Mountain Home, and that was a weekend activity, and was to go up to that gold claim and pan in the river and poke around for gold. And one of these, and he'd get the whole family in on it and doing it. And um, let's see, there was 5 kids in the family. My dad, 3 of his brothers, and then his little sister. His little sister, Noelle, she hadn't even started kindergarten yet, but they're all working away at the claim, panning and sleuthing. And she's like, "Look, a bear!" And up above the river from the claim, standing in a clearing between the trees up on the ridge line, was a Sasquatch standing there watching them panning. And immediately the whole family, that's not a bear. And when it noticed they were watching it, it it walked into the cover of the trees, walked like a Bigfoot would. And so the whole family seen it. So that's the last time that my grandfather saw the creature. And then that was the first and only time most of the family had saw it. And then in my dad's early 20s, he and my Uncle Doyle, they went backpack camping in another place in Idaho, over behind Stanley Lake. They
Okay.
they hiked way back in there behind Stanley Lake, and they were just camping out in the open by the fire, throw tarps down, sleeping bags. And anyway, in the night, the ground just started shaking, woke my dad and uncle up. And my dad said he felt the hair brush against his arm, and he
Oh my
sat
God.
bolt upright. And luckily enough, they had a full moon going on, and he could see the creature walking. I mean, walking past the campfire and through the camp. I mean, went right through the middle of the camp and brushed up against him. And my uncle Doyle, he was sleeping with his 45, and he had that drawn. And my dad said he was shaking like Barney Fife, just scared, you know. And so they both saw the creature in the moonlight from close distance. It actually rubbed up against my dad, and so that's the second time they saw it. And I go hiking back there behind Stanley Lake now because of their Bigfoot sighting back in there. And a couple of years ago, we were hiking back in there, and all of a sudden, uh, we got some wood knocks, and off in the distance, in the cover of the trees, we just saw a tree shaking and got some whoops. And then we started finding footprints, and we don't. Our group does not go out and try and solicit vocalizations or wood knocks, but if the creature starts at first, we'll be we'll be obliged to respond. So we started responding back with wood knocks and stuff, and it really felt like we were having some interaction that day. And several months later, I told my dad, hey, we went back there hiking and we were having interactions with Bigfoot, and he treated me like I was a crazy person. I'm like, hey, look, Dad, this is the video. I've got proof. It's on video. Don't treat me like a crazy person. You're the one that had it rub up against you in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And
So
you
you're
have
now
no
conveniently forgetting about.
evidence, So, I told my dad to go watch that on YouTube, and then, he's like, oh my gosh, it was knocking and whooping, and I'm like, I told you. And we were finding 18-inch long tracks and stuff
We have
back
big
in there where
tracks.
all that was going on. So that's pretty neat.
Very.
That's like 40 something years later, and if there's a reason for them to be there the first time, there's probably a reason for them to continue to
Still be
go
there.
back or be in a certain place.
Yep. Well, I know one thing that you've probably figured over the years when you go and you get these cold old reports and stuff. Somebody saw one here on this stretch of road at such and such date, and you start looking at it on the map, and sometimes you go, they're not living around there. Why are people seeing them there? And you look a little closer and you go, oh, there's two big wilderness areas, and this is the little strip of land that connects them. They're going from point A to point B, and that's where people are spotting them. They're not really living there, they just travel through there.
Right. And I enjoy going to sighting report locations, especially if it's a multiple history sighting place. If it's a one-off somewhere, I may not visit it, but I like going to the hot spots. And it's so cool to get in there and see what's actually there. And then you start realizing why the creature uses the area or passes through the area. You got to see the stuff firsthand. And some of these places we go are tough to get to. I have this standing joke. I tell my viewers, I'm like, hey, could you guys please have your Bigfoot sightings in less remote places easier to get into, because some of these places I've gotten into, we're worried that we're not going to get back out.
Even trying to get into where it happened and find the spot is a nightmare. And then you gotta get there somehow, and then you gotta get back out again. I've been complaining to my local Bigfoot about that, to start building the giant tree structures closer to roads, because it's too hard to get to a lot of them.
Yeah.
I don't think they're listening to me. At least they let me go visit the ones we know about, and they don't, huck a boulder at me or something.
Yeah, and something that I've learned over the years of seriously doing it. I mean, my since I could drive, and through my adult years, it was just a couple of times a year hobby. And then about I don't know, about 14 years ago, a couple of friends of mine, we decided to get serious about it, and we've been serious about it ever since. And we're out there as much as we can get out there on weekends and vacation allows. And I've learned that you got to throw the stereotype Bigfoot out the window. Sometimes Bigfoot will come into a town or the outskirts of a town, and stuff like that, and people are like, oh, Bigfoot would never do that. And I'm like, I don't think Bigfoot read the rule book on where it's supposed to be and what it can do. Bigfoot's gonna be where Bigfoot wants to be. And sometimes they do come into towns at night and get spotted, and some of those Bigfoot reports are crazy. I mean, I got one along the Rogue River that motivated me to do 2 expeditions there. I mean, it come into the woman's house, and she saw him standing in her living room from her bedroom, and she had a shotgun in her bedroom, but she was just standing there frozen in fear. And she said that that Bigfoot was so wide and it had to hunch down in there. It was so tall, but if it would have come down the hallway after her, it would have had to turn to the side because its shoulders were too wide to come down that hallway. But she backed into her bedroom. She had a shotgun in there that she had kept close by because it something had spooked her previously. Something kept breaking the chains of her dogs, and she lost a couple of dogs. I mean, just chain
Whoa.
snapped, never see the
Yeah.
dogs again. And she didn't think the dogs snapped the chains and ran off on their own, never to return. So she
Right.
started keeping a shotgun in her bedroom. Well, she backed in there and grabbed that thing and come out, and the Bigfoot had left. And so, and then another sighting along the Rogue River, a fisherman had a Bigfoot, an orangish red Bigfoot come up and take his salmon. And then one of the towns, I actually think it was the Rogue, Oregon town on the outskirts and stuff, a woman and her teenage son saw one below a bridge by the river there. So those three sightings have got me into the area a couple of times. Several years ago, up by Crater Lake, we did an expedition on the upper Rogue River, and then this last year, we did one on the lower Rogue River. And you and I were talking about our Silver Creek. One of the days we decided to check along the ridge line. Bigfoot's known as a ridge walker, and there was a mountaintop lake up above the Rogue River near the Silver Creek area. Jenny and I wanted to get up and find that lake and take a look around. And on the way up, and we were on the ridge lines, we stopped to just have a sandwich in a random spot. And I think one of us, it was probably her, had her window open. And as we come to the stop and shut the car off, we heard a tree just getting ripped down viciously in a deep guttural growl, and we were just both shitting bricks. It scared the hell out of us. And me being the dummy I am, I grab a camera, and I grab the camera with the parabolic mic because we're hearing this, and I'm hoping that something happens again. I mean, not
Yay.
the parabolic mic, but the shotgun mic, which is
Right.
acts like a parabolic. I come rolling out, hoping it does it again. And Jenny didn't want to get out of the car at first. She wanted the protection of the steel on the glass because that was intimidating. That that tree being ripped down, and it was out of sight, but it seemed like a warning or a threat. Well, anyway, I roll out, and within a couple of minutes of starting the camera, it starts whooping at us, and two different directions. I mean, the same direction, but from two different ways. We're hearing kind of a deep whoop, and then a higher pitched whoop, but they seemed very friendly and inviting, and started calming our nerves. So it was weird. As soon as we pull up, something vicious like a warning, and then it gives us these friendly whoops. So I was able to get Jenny to start getting away from the vehicle a little bit more. She wanted to make sure that she could get to the vehicle in a couple of seconds in a mad
Yeah.
dash if anything happened. But pretty soon, you know, I was like trying to talk her into like sneaking up behind it, which is never going to happen. It knew we were there as soon as we, and you're not going to sneak up on a Bigfoot. I don't care who you are. But yeah, we got a lot of the recordings, and I think it was because I had that shotgun mic, we were able to get a lot of those whoops. We got some wood knocks, we found some footprints, and so that was nice getting that kind of action. After all of that went away, they stopped doing it, and either hid, went on, or just got quiet for whatever reason. We finally finished our sandwiches, and we started looking for that lake again, and then we ended up getting two flat tires at the same time. And so I
Does
tried to fix
Sasquatch
it.
have a spike strip up there waiting for you or
Yeah,
something? I mean, like, what are the odds of two tires at the
I've
same time?
I've never had two flats at the same time. So yeah, we threw a spare on one, and then I tried to fix a flat on the other. We just had one fix a flat, and it wouldn't work. And luckily, I had this compressor that plugs into the cigarette lighter, and it's worth its weight in gold. It got us off the mountain. I had to stop and pump up that tire like every 15 minutes coming off
Oh
of the
God.
mountain. And then we got down to base camp. Our base camp was down by the Rogue River, and got down to base camp. And then the next morning, I took the vehicle, pumping it up every 15 minutes again. I took it into what was it? Gold Beach, Oregon, to a service station there, and a little while into getting my two flats fixed, the guy comes out and he's like, I got to show you this. And he takes me back in the shop and he's showing me the tire I put the fix-a-flat in. He's like, yeah, you put the fix-a-flat in the wrong tire. Look at this. And he's sticking his finger through the hole. So I had to buy a new tire. Well, there was another tire technician in there, a guy a little older than me, shaved bald head, and he recognized me as from RMSO, and he comes up and starts telling me that his grandfather was involved with building Highway 5 way back in the late 50s or whatever it was, and his grandpa swears that all the Bigfoot activity that construction crew complained about really happened. The Bigfoot throwing the 55-gallon drums into the ravine and messing with their heavy equipment and all that. And yeah, my grandpa said that all happened, and the footprints and everything. Well, then the other guy that was actually working on my tires, he starts, saying, hey, you need to go down here by the Rogue River. I saw Bigfoot there a couple of years ago, blah, 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 blah. And I already been to the spot he was telling me, but I didn't want to burst his bubble. I'd already been there. I'm just like, oh, yeah, tell me about
Yeah.
it. So that was pretty neat, I mean, I don't ever want to get a flat tire, but it led to a couple of guys telling me about Bigfoot in the area that just justified and instilled the reason we were there. We were in the right place and looking in the right areas. So that was
Yeah.
amazing. And you and I were discussing that you guys had similar vocalizations that we had up there on Silver Creek, Oregon.
Yep, that's what made us actually track down that video, because we were up here in September. We haven't released this expedition yet. We've shown little clips from it. And I had William Lunsford, the Falk Monster Hunter, and Eric the Adventurer with me, as well as part of my usual team. And man, they were vocal all weekend long. They were making these weird calls that we're not used to hearing. And every time we'd go up from camp and go in the direction of where it was coming from, they'd stop. So we tried several times to get a decent recording of it, and I think Eric got part of one of the calls on a recording or something. But they're following us around all weekend doing this, and neither me nor William had heard him make this particular vocalization before. So we're like, well, we can assume it's Sasquatch, since there's a bunch of them around here, and it's coming from more than one place at a time, but we don't know for sure. So Eric left about a day before we did, and the first thing he did when he got back to where he had any kind of internet was to jump online and see if he could find anybody had recorded calls similar to that. And within a day, he's on the Silver Creek Sasquatch video that you recorded, and what you recorded right at the beginning of it was the same exact thing we were hearing all weekend long.
What could have possibly been in the forest over there that it crunched that big? What was it beating on?
Did you have your camera on when it happened?
Yeah, it was pointed that way. It's a hooting?
That was a whoop. We keep getting Bigfoot activity on this mountain. It is close.
Well, it knows that we're here because whatever it is.
It's doing in our direction.
Like that, and it just crunched something up into a million little pieces over there. I don't know what that was. That was kind of hostile. That's something flat-footed right there.
That's Bigfoot. It's wider than my foot, but the same length. That could be like a teen juvenile or a bear right there.
Or just the front part of the foot.
Can you point out the toes?
Yeah. The toes are right here. All along. There's the big toe right there. And the rest of the toes are right here. Oh, there's that noise again.
I think we're up here with the Bigfoot.
Should we make our way over there?
Gosh, I wanted to get to this clearing and look down, but now there's all this. We're on a mountaintop, up above the Rogue River. During a time of year where Bigfoot sightings seem to escalate, and I think it's because of the salmon run. I'm watching for tree peekers. Whoa. It sounded very aggressive in the beginning and had me spooked.
Yeah.
And now it's making these non-threatening hoops at us.
There's a tree knocker.
Another one. We're up with the ridgewalkers. We're on the mountain. I want to show you guys how high up we are. But I'm not leaving you alone, Jenny. That thing sounded aggressive earlier. And it's not very far away.
I know. It's just right over there.
See, we're on this mountain. There's a valley. And that mountain over there. And at the bottom is the Rogue River full of salmon. Salmon and steelhead. And over there, we've gotten some vocalizations. We're actually getting closer to it over here, Jenny. When we first got here, we were hearing screams that way. Off in a distance. Just heard them really well. And then over here, something went off with some guttural ape-like sound. Sounded like it was breaking the hell out of something. Freaked Jenny and I out, so we started heading back in the direction of the vehicle for the protection of it. And then it started doing these non-threatening hoops or whoops at us. And now we've gotten enough courage to do what we wanted to do in the first place, is to come and look off down into the valley.
Oh, something's right there.
Where?
Right there.
There's something up ahead of us.
Yeah. I think something just... See how all the grass is tramped down?
Was it the sticks flying up heading into the woods?
Yeah.
It's heading for the cover of the woods, whatever it was.
Yeah, I heard it come through here.
Let's head up in the forest where we heard it getting crazy and head back that direction. I swear I just heard a big old wood knock that way. I got my camera faced right now. Big old boom! That's the direction we were hearing the whoops and stuff.
I don't know if it's the wind in the trees or whatever, but I keep hearing like a chattering noise over there.
There ain't no wind. Look. There isn't even a breeze.
Oh, it sounds like people talking.
Which direction?
Over there? No, it's like...
Okay. That's the direction that we heard the whooping and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like samurai chatter.
Yeah, I can't make it out. It just sounds like people talking back and forth together. What the hell?
Sounds like a damn ape.
It's chucking shit around over there. Oh, excuse my language.
That was a big howl. It's slamming stuff around.
It's creepy as hell. getting really loud. We need to make it. The hell? My camera's dying.
Alright. Mine's still going. What is it?
I don't know.
The ground's too crunchy to sneak up on it, but maybe I will try.
Well, let's go. Okay, it's where we just came back from.
It was open again. Did you hear it?
Yeah.
Why does it keep doing that at us?
I don't know. Can you hear the deeper one?
Yeah. I hope me making that mouth pop didn't end that, because it's been going on for about 20 minutes now.
Yeah,
We
they
got-
were more vocal the closer we were to the car, but when we started, sneaking into the woods, trying to get behind them, trying to find them,
Yep.
their vocalizations got less frequent. They got the vocalizations got quieter and pretty soon went away. They know that we're looking for them and don't want to be
Yep.
found, and they're pretty soon, oh crap, we better shut up. They're gonna find us.
Well, in our case, we were taking it that like they were trying to get us to come into the woods and go hang out with them. Because first thing in the morning, William got up and he walked across the road, and there's a peninsula over there. And when he got to the far side of it, where you could see him from across the slough, pop, perfect wood knock, dead still otherwise, one perfect wood knock. And he's like, "Oh my God, are there that many of them around here?" And he comes walking back to camp. Well, as soon as he gets to camp, they start making this vocal. And there's a little bit of wind after a while, and we're like, well, is that the trees rubbing together or what's going on? But you're hearing it from more than one direction. And then the wind will stop and you're hearing it anyway. And they wouldn't quit it until we went out in the woods. And as soon as we're out in the woods, it all stopped. And we're walking around for about 2 hours, filming everything, finding tracks, filming structures, whatnot. As soon as we get back to camp, starts up again. And they were doing this all weekend long. The only time they switched it up is when we went way down the valley about 8 miles to where there's a big teepee structure. And we didn't know they were there or anything, except Eric said he heard one walking behind him when he was coming back out. Something was snapping brush and walking behind him. Thought it was one of us. It wasn't. And then he got out to the road, and everybody's out here. Who was behind me in the woods over there? As soon as we got out to the road, they started whistling at us. They're on the other side of the river, like 100 yards away from us, and the river's making noise, and they're whistling so loud you can hear it. So we start whistling back, and we're yelling to them and saying stuff and everything. And then finally we go walk up the rest of the way up the road and get in the vehicle. Well, I didn't realize it, but Eric actually recorded all that with his cell phone. And man, is it a nice recording. You can hear those whistles clear as day. And there's obviously more than one over there. And they're all like, "Oh, you guys leaving already? Woo, woo, come on back." So yeah, that's fun interaction, man, when you actually got them whistling at you and you're yelling and whistling back to them and they're whistling back. And that's really a blast. That's when you get pumped to want to go back out there again. Yeah, cool stuff is happening. We even videoed it.
Yep. That's something whistling. There's no doubt about it. That's not
It's a sharp, quick whistle.
Yep.
It's not a tree. It sounds similar to what we're hearing up there at the camp, doesn't it?
Yep, it did. Yep, like what we heard this
These
morning. when there wasn't
motherfuckers,
any
but maybe
wind.
they followed us down the road here. Are we going to see another tree fall, man? It sure looks like it. Look at these fuckers. Oh, really? Shit. It's right down here.
Yep. None of you guys are 80 years old.
Nope.
And out here, this air is so fresh.
It's moving around. And there's more than one of them.
Doesn't seem to make any difference if the wind's blowing or not.
Yep.
Hear that? Hear the clicking in there?
I do.
When we were walking out, and I said, William, are you over there? And you said, yeah, I'm up here on the road. But I was hearing crackles and pops over here is what I was hearing it. Okay. But the thing's driving me crazy. It's gonna make me want to walk back in there.
It's across the river, whatever it is.
Right on. So yeah, we were super excited by that. It's like, wow, here's this, Kelly got the same damn thing 2 weeks before we were hearing it. He recorded it way over there where he is, hundreds of miles away. He gets the same audio capture. So
Yeah,
that's
pretty,
super cool.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Damn cool. Well, you've been at it for quite a while. I just had last fall, I had Blaine Tyler on. He was doing his 10th anniversary on YouTube. And you've been on what, 10, 11 years? So about the same amount of time you've been cranking out everything.
I started my first YouTube where I started posting Bigfoot stuff in 2012. So yeah, I'm on my 10th year of YouTube.
Right.
We were Bigfooting seriously, trying to get a photo of the creature for several years before. And what's nice is that that serious experience leading up to when we finally made a channel, we had already gotten past some of the learning curve and started figuring out the areas that there's activity. So that really helped out all the scouting and expeditions we did before we started a YouTube and a website and all that.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with some of these channels. They're just like fledgling uber rookie greenhorns. And, well, I'm going to start a channel and go out and start trying to see if I can find anything. Your channel might be really boring for a long time. You might want to not film a lot until you actually start finding things. That would help. And that's one thing I always loved about your channel, because you don't do a whole lot of superfluous video. If you're doing a recon video, we're walking around here, we're filming us walking around. Yeah, that's one thing. But generally with you could be out on a location 2-3 days and only come back with about 15 minutes worth of video you want to show. Here's the captures we got from the game cams over here, if we had any there. Here's some of the stuff we found. We found some tracks. We found some snaps. We maybe recorded some vocals, stuff like that. So you don't waste everybody's time. It's an action-packed Kelly Shaw production. You can actually see something.
I'll sometimes come back with 4 hours of footage, but I cut it down to the most what's interesting to me, or I think people would find interesting. I cut down to the highlights and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to bore everybody with miles and miles of hiking. I mean, some people ask for that. Some people are into that, want to see it. There's people that can't get out there, or they just simply don't live in a location that they can do something like that. So they enjoy seeing some of the sights in these places that we go. So we try and have something for everybody. But yeah,
well, here's another thing though, with your channel and my channel, let's face it, we're in the beauty spot of North America. So any direction we aim a camera, something pretty is going to be on the screen. And a lot of people live in kind of a bland setting, So when they get to see something like this, it's like, wow, we're in Middle Earth again. Wow, this is amazing scenery. We're used to it. They're not. So
I
even
take it
us
for
just walking around
sometimes,
filming the scenery, they're like, that's so cool looking. I wish I could get out there. And you get a lot of people that like your channel that are just, mobility impaired, or they don't have the money to go on vacations and stuff like that. They're stuck in a city all the time, and they enjoy seeing that woods so much because they can't get there.
Right.
At least somebody's there filming it. Here's what it's like walking around. Here's the 3-foot thick trunks of the trees laying on the ground you have to step over. Here's the huge boulders you have to walk around. Here's the massive log tender and thickets. And, oh, there's a 12-foot Sasquatch following you. There, you happy now?
Some of these hikes feel like you're on a Stairmaster. You have to.
Oh God, I know.
Off trail, yeah, it kicks your butt.
The thing that kills me up here, Kelly, and I'm sure you've seen this in some of the other areas, that some of these old growth forests where you don't have a whole lot of undergrowth, and you can see like 100 yards. You can zoom in with your camera something 100 yards away, but it takes you 20 minutes to walk that 100 yards over there because there's so much everything
True.
in the way. It's unbelievable how long it takes you to walk through some of these areas.
After several years of doing this, and I just, it's an expensive hobby or sport. I don't know. Our cameras were these cheap Walmart specials, and that's all that we could afford. And when we were finally able to buy a professional camera, the ability to zoom was what
Oh
I
God,
was
that's
looking
handy.
for, because I thought I'm probably more than likely going to see a Bigfoot on the next ridge than right in my face, and so I need to zoom in on it. So my Canon 50 can zoom in about 2 miles and fill the frame with the deer. Now, when you're zooming in a long ways, I mean, just the camera seems to just shake.
Yeah.
And so I'll use software to steady that out. And people just don't realize when you're zooming in 2 miles that the tiniest movement creates shake. So I have to use software to stable it out. But I've had 2 Bigfoot sightings. My first one was in 2018. So all these years of seriously doing it, I finally had one in what was it? The mid-September 2018, and that was a long distance sighting. That was probably close to a quarter of a mile away, and I'm happy it was that far away because this thing was massive. And I had people to look at, that were the same distance away, so I could put it in perspective. Jenny and I were coming back from a week-long Bigfoot expedition on the Grand Mesa of Colorado, and we were coming home to Utah, and we wanted to go down to Spanish Fork. Well, there was a giant wildfire there, so they were diverting traffic north to Indian Canyon, which added like an hour to our drive, but that took us north, the direction we needed to go. Well, there was a lot of people that needed to go to Spanish Fork, or they needed to go south of Spanish Fork. And so along the way, people were pulling over, talking to each other, how are we going to get home? Well,
Right.
when we got to the summit of Indian Canyon, there was these 3 big trucks pulling 3 boats, and they were pulled off in a turnout, and they totally filled up the little turnout. And there's probably 15 people from these trucks all standing around, and I knew what they were discussing. They were like, what are we going to do now? The wildfires diverted them. Well, I'm looking at these people, and Jen's driving. It's the end of the expedition, and it's like, please drive, So she's driving, and I'm looking at these people, and there's a little gully to the river, and then a mountain side, and almost level with these guys behind them is a Bigfoot squared off staring at them. And I start yelling Bigfoot to Jenny, and of course she's giving me these look like I'm totally nuts, and I'm like, pull over, pull over, pull over, and I'm grabbing my camera, and this is just a little 2-lane highway,
Right.
and with guardrails, and just straight off into the gully to the river. So she had to wait for the next turnout to pull off about a quarter of a mile from these people we just passed. And I'm staring at the Bigfoot, getting my camera turned on, and she pulls off into this turnout. And then this tree that's sitting at the turnout blocks my view from the Bigfoot. And I'm rolling out of the car with the camera running, and I had it on film, because I didn't know where it was going to be after I come out. Well, I
Right.
come out, and I'm looking where it was at, and I probably stared at it for a good 10 seconds, and it's gone.
Damn
And
it.
yes, it's not there anymore. But I kept the camera filming, and I kept heading towards these people with the hoping that one of them saw it or something, as I was hoping. Well, now these people are about a quarter of a mile from me. They're the exact same distance as the Bigfoot was the last time I saw it. So I'm able to put in perspective how big this creature was. The biggest guys in that group were probably 6 feet tall. This Bigfoot looked like double the size, double the width, double the thickness. It was just gigantic, like a 9 foot to 10 foot tall creature, just massive. And I saw everything but its face and its fingers. I mean, I could see its arms, its hands, the gap between its leg, and the way it was squared off. It did have some cover between them and it, but I was us driving, I was able to see it completely clear. It didn't have any cover between me and it. So anyway, I head to those guys with the camera in that direction, kept looking up, trying to find it, and just kept the camera. And I've dissected that footage, and I cannot find the Bigfoot in there. After we passed that tree, I don't know where it went, but it up and disappeared. And I keep going back to that spot, trying to find something that would look like what I saw that day, and nothing. Whatever was standing there is gone now. So and stumps don't just get up and walk off. So I know it wasn't a stump shaped Bigfoot. Well, I get halfway to these people and they already pile into their cars and take off. So I didn't get to ask them. And I don't think any of them saw it, because every time I was looking at them, their backs were to where the creature was, and they were just having their conversation. So yeah, it was when I least suspected it. If that wildfire that shut down that canyon hadn't happened, I'd have never saw it. And I mean, that Bigfoot may have been there because of the fire. It may have been escaping the wildfire. So that may have put it there. And the Bigfoot may be a little bit confused, not at the top of its game because of what's going on. So yeah, it's just, and I always thought this throughout the years, it's going to be a combination of circumstances that's going to create a sighting. And so that was my first one. The next one I saw a couple of years, actually just a couple of months ago, the last week of August 2021. That one was much closer, but it wasn't as big as this one. I mean, this one was over 7 feet tall, not as thick, not as wide. I mean, much more massive than any of the biggest basketball players I've ever saw. But it wasn't that one was a giant in Indian Canyon.
Oh. Yeah, and you should probably go ahead and tell your next sighting here too that you had recently. But one thing I should mention is that you got a lot of fans out there, and some of them are also very good at Bigfoot research, and some of them have actually managed to film them before. And I've heard several of them say, I pray to God that Kelly gets to see one soon, because he's put in more time in the frickin' field than anybody. He deserves the sighting. I hope to God he gets to see one pretty soon. So it's actually like, it was really awesome for us to hear that, he finally got to see one. Well, you've been catching them on video a bunch, but you got to see one too.
Such a relief. That that Bigfoot that I saw, several months later, I think it was June of 2019, Jack Osborne's Portals to Hell. I was one of the first episodes, may very well have been the first episode. He did a skinwalker investigation at the mouth of Indian Canyon. They stayed there and everything. Well, even though they were doing a skinwalker investigation, he interviewed a guy that a couple of when I put the timeline together, this guy just a month or two after I saw that Bigfoot at the top, he saw it the bottom near the mouth of the canyon on horseback, and he saw the Bigfoot and stuff. The guy, the sighting report witness, did not want to call it a Bigfoot, but he kept describing this giant Bigfoot, and he tried catching it on horseback, and it outpaced him and got away. This Bigfoot was faster than him and his horse. And so that was really neat to see on that television show, a sighting report in the same area where I just saw one, and our sightings were just a couple of months apart. So that Bigfoot had been in that canyon for a couple of months.
Yeah, apparently he must hang around there. That must be one of his spots. You know, that's one thing we brought up in our last conversation. We were talking about some areas that you go into where the presence of the Sasquatch there is so high that there's literally no predators even living there. You see all
Right.
kinds of signs of cover, food for them. You know, there's all kinds of game animals running around. There's all kinds of veggies for them to eat. There's water. There should be bears and stuff all over the place here. Where the hell are they? Well, no,
Right.
it's because the Sasquatch are living there full time, and bears aren't suicidal. That's why they're not there.
Well, Jenny had this idea in 2013 to start a GPS map overlay study. She's a tidal researcher, so she's constantly dealing with maps and GPS locations in her job. And um, we had been doing this for several years, and we started noticing off trail and Bigfoot sighting hotspots these structures that had no rhyme or reason. I mean, giant logs that would take 4 or 5 strong men to put into place. And you think, oh, throw a tarp on there, it's an instant shelter. Well, these are on mountain sides where
Yeah,
nobody wants to try and sleep, and so just no rhyme or reason. So we decided to start studying them, and in these Bigfoot sighting hotspots. So we started putting them on GPS so we can find them again, and we try and come back to them annually and see if they change. And we've seen 2 different structures in 2 different locations. One in Sasquatch Canyon, we saw it get one year we saw a log added to it, and then we were able to find the indentation in the ground. And then on the high Uenas in Yellowstone Canyon, we found one that got added to it, and we were able to find where the deadfall was laying. And these 200-300-pound logs, the wind's not going to pick them up off of the ground and gently set them in a strategic place in these structures.
right.
Something with muscle had to have put those into place. So that's pretty neat. And something else that we noticed in Yellowstone Canyon is the structures that we've been studying up there and returning annually. There's some mountaintop springs that they're around. And so a water source on the mountain, the animals or the Bigfoot necessarily don't have to leave the mountaintop. They got their water. And then the mountainside that points into the sun, there's like 6 different types of berries there. There's wild strawberries, raspberries, thimbleberries, Oregon grapes, huckleberries, rose hips, the list goes on. And it's just full of them because it's a perfect place for them. Well, the high Uenas is just full of black bear. And
Right.
and here's water, here's food, and we started noticing that within these structure areas, we never find bear scat, bear tracks, scratched up trees or anything, or hear the bear vocalizations. We know the difference between a bear vocalization and a potential Bigfoot, and we don't hear them there. And we started thinking, hey, that maybe these structures do belong to Bigfoot. And I mean, I don't think the bear recognize them, but I think the Bigfoot are pushy enough and alpha enough that the bears realize that this isn't where I want to eat, this isn't where I want to sleep, and they stay out of the area. So we're seeing that firsthand, and it was nice. You and I were chatting the other night, and you brought that up, that you have areas where you can tell that the bears don't want to be, even though it's perfect bear habitat.
Yep. Yeah, our number one research area up there in the center of the Sapphire Mountains. It's in a valley. It's about 3 by 6 miles long and about 6.5, 7,000 feet. And yeah, we've been going up there for years. We've never seen any sign of a wolf or a mountain lion or a bear. There's moose and elk and every other kind of thing you can imagine. Tracks all over the place, ridiculous amount of them, but no predatory animals. And we've done the same thing that you do. Since they have gigantic structures up there, we like to go back and check them every so often and see if anything is changing. And yeah, that's one of the things I love about your research. You go out there, boots on the ground, go camp, go back to the same places over and over again, check and see if anything's changing. Well, guess what? You're finding that things are changing. So are we. We had that one giant 6-story tall X structure that was up for 2 years that they took down for some reason. And we know they took it down because the center post holding it up is still there. But both the side pieces are now laying in a little stack next to it. And then you go down the ridge from there, there used to be a smaller ancillary X structure down in the valley beneath it. And we went and checked that to see if they had done anything with that. Yeah, it's not an X structure anymore. Now it's a 5-story teepee. So the next time we come up there a month later, Mike's got his video from the month before, and he's standing in the same place that he shot it, looking at his video. And he goes, they moved this pine tree. Like, what? Yeah, there's a 40-foot tall live pine tree that was straight up the month before. Now the top of it is underneath the teepee.
Yeah, I've seen where they bend those over and shove them under structure
Yeah.
areas. I've
And
seen
how
that
the
in
hell
a
did
few
you
places.
cannot explain that with any kind of storm, wind, or anything else that could possibly do that? And there are no humans out there walking around a mile and a half off the trail in the middle of nowhere, even if they had, the inclination to do something crazy like that. So, it's like we are documenting them actually changing these structures around and building them and stuff. So, and all the time, every time we find these huge structures and stuff, we can find tracks near them. If they're visiting them at all, they're leaving tracks around there. You can find them. So again, more confirmation. This is why we need more boots on the ground, butts in the field researchers like the mighty Kelly and his team.
Yeah, you gotta keep coming back and checking on them to figure out exactly why they're using them. We suspect that the teepee style structures surround territory areas. Possibly the alpha male will build them to show his side and strength, to try and impress his rivals and impress his females. That's a possibility. And then Pacific Northwest, there's a few tribes that state that when they build the log structures, they build them for every member in the family or the clan. So
Right.
if that's true, the two different structures over the last 10 years that we've seen a log added to, maybe they had a baby and added a log for the new infant Bigfoot in the area. So yeah,
entirely possible. Now,
yeah,
have you noticed little
yeah.
ancillary structures? Because a lot of the places where you find something big that the alpha male made, you'll find the same kind of structure on the miniature scale nearby it. The little ones are sitting there copying dad. They're making their version of the same thing.
Well, we witnessed something pretty crazy, and we've got a video of it out there. Brody and I filmed it. Brody and I were following some 19 and 14-inch tracks, and every
Wow.
once in a while over the years, and this is in Sasquatch Canyon, you'll find we were finding 7-inch Bigfoot tracks near the one with 14 time and time again. So we started suspecting the one with 14-inch tracks is the mother of the infant. And Patty, I know her tracks were right around 14, the most famous Bigfoot to ever be filmed. And
Right.
and that's a female, everybody knows that. And so the one with the 19-inch tracks may very well be the alpha male. That's his female. Well, we were tracking them up a mountain one day, Brody and I, and in the really steep sections, the female kept putting her right hand down, and her from the bottom of her palm to the longest finger was almost as long as her foot track, 14 inches. And
Wow.
then the thumb in relation to ours was a little bit fatter and stubbier than ours in relation to a human's. Well, every once in a while in a steep section, she's putting her hand down. Well, then we got up to a flat spot where we pick up the infant's tracks, and this is the year that we noticed that the infant was no longer 7-inch tracks; it was 8 inches. It's like we had witnessed
Getting bigger.
the infant grown. Well, you could see that this infant was having a great time in this area. By what was going on, you could see that it was rolling around, throwing stuff in the air, ripping bark off of trees, and not only that, it was making these little mini teepee structures. It made like 2 of them using that were only about 2 to 3 feet tall, putting these sticks in these baby pine trees and stuff. And we're just like, oh my gosh, there has got to be something to these structures, because why is the infant Bigfoot copying the big ones? It's copying the adults. It was just the neatest thing, getting footprints, handprints that day, an infant, and figuring out. We figured out why the female was putting her hand down once in a while in those steep sections. She's got the infant in one arm, and to give herself some stability, she's putting a hand down. So it all made sense. So that was a pretty neat day, seeing the infant's foot grown from the year or two before, and it playing and making its own little structures, and that's all on video. I think that was back in 2014 that we found all that and followed them up that mountain until the tracks disappeared.
Yeah, we've come to believe that the big X structures that they're setting up are territorial markers that basically mean keep out, and especially if they got a leaner on one side, stay on the side of the leaner, don't go past it. And now they had taken down that one giant 6-story X structure with the leaner on it. The third year we had found this area, mysteriously it's down all of a sudden. You're like, well, that's kind of weird. So we went further down the ridge line. Well, now there's 2 giant X's that weren't there before. Each one of them's about maybe 200 yards from the other one. And you can see one from the other one if you're standing in exactly the right spot. You can see the other one. And we filmed them. They're, like 5 stories tall. They're friggin' ridiculously huge. But these weren't there the year before. Now the big one down at the end of the whole peninsula, this ridge line, is down. And ones on the side of it facing our camp have now come into existence. But neither one of them has a leaner on it. They're just giant X structures. So we're like, okay, well, let's look around this ridge line a little bit more. And we started looking at it, and we realized that, like, none of this stuff up here is wind damage. Trees are pushed in opposite directions right next to each other. There's they basically built a jungle gym. They moved all kinds of logs in.
I've seen those types
made
of
giant
structures.
arches. They moved stuff around all over this hillside. So when we were up there in September, I brought William in, and we came in right across from camp. We crossed the slough a little bit, and that's the edge of that big ridge. So it's that close to camp. And that's where the kids hang out, apparently. And I said, okay, we're going to walk from one end up here to the other end where they used to have the giant X and see how many tracks you can find. And this is where they let the kids play. And by the time we got up to where the X had been, he said he had found over 30 juvie tracks just randomly walking up that ridge from point A to point B. They're all over the damn place. And that's what we figure why they got those big X's up there. Those are like, hey, kids' playground. Stay out. And luckily they like us enough that they let us get away with it. Man, it's creepy going up there because we're starting to see them in the background on the video and stuff, and they're really close to us. And having the kids that close to you, they're not as predictable as the adults are.
They're so slick.
It's scarier, actually. I'd rather have the giant adults near me.
It's amazing how close they can get, and not see them, or then you do, and you're like, I can't believe it was able to slip up on us like that. I just want to go to my most recent sighting. It's
tell everybody that one.
Yeah, I've only ever had 2 sightings, and I don't make a big deal out of it because it's kind of embarrassing. I feel like it's my job to get a clear, open video photo of a Bigfoot, and then I see them, and it doesn't happen. But these sightings don't happen for very long, and they're gone. And well, anyway, it was the last week of August, and Jenny and I were going on top of Monte Cristo Mountain to some springs up there where, this is a local haunt. This is only 60, 70 miles from where we live, but we know 7 people personally over the years that have saw Bigfoot up around those springs.
Wow. That's a lot. Imagine how many more there are if that's just the ones you know personally. Oh, my God.
So we're going up to service these cameras, and we both have to pee really bad. They closed the last public restrooms at the bottom of the mountain. They had them shut down for some damn reason. They're never closed. And so we're about halfway to the top of the mountain, and we just couldn't take it anymore. And we pulled off on some random dirt road we had never been on before, and then got down that dirt road and pulled off at the first opportunity. And I jump out of the truck, and I just pee right next to the truck, whatever. And Jenny goes and hides in the trees. And so I keep a close eye on her, whether you know it or not. I keep a close eye on her in the woods. So I'm kind of like, all right, Jenny, and pretty soon she comes back and we jump in the truck. Well, I go to throw it in reverse and I look up in the mirror, and standing behind us about 35 feet away up on an embankment behind a fallen over tree or a log was a Bigfoot. But that's not what my brain registered at first. At first I just, 1,000 things went through my mind in a second. I was thinking it was some dude, and I even said that, and it's giving me the creeps. I'm like, that guy watched us pee. And
that pervert.
and I told Jenny, I go, there's some dude back there. And as soon as I said that, and I'd probably watched him for a split second or two, that's when it registered. It was no dude. Dark brown, head to toe, and just huge. And as soon as I said that, it split that direction behind me in my rear view mirror and went out of the frame of the mirror in the back window. And that's and we, when we're up there, we have cameras in grabbing distance, and I snatch my camera beside me, and Jenny could tell by the look on my face, she's like, that wasn't a guy. And I roll out and go running for it, and Jenny's all like, you're not armed. And I'm like, grab something. And I go running up to that log. And I think with my adrenaline that, I should have some fear, but my adrenaline, got the better of me. And I go running up to that log that it was standing behind. And that's when I realized, I knew it was big, but I mean, it was huge. I could see, it was on the other side of the log. I could see the gap between its thighs and its upper thighs on the other side of that log. I get up to the log, and that log's hitting me at the upper belly button. So this thing is 2.5, maybe 3 feet taller than me, and much wider, just big. And it split that direction, and immediately we start picking up its tracks. And they're Bigfoot tracks. And we track it, and we eventually find a second Bigfoot tracks. There was more than just that one, and there usually is. I mean, people that stereotype it as a lone creature, that's not so. If you find some Bigfoot tracks and you look around carefully enough, you'll usually find that there's another one or more. They stay in small family groups or whatever they are. Well, we tracked this thing. We lost and picked up the track several times to private property. And there was no need to go on private property, which I won't without permission anyway, but you could see where it stepped over the fence. And this fence is hitting me about lower chest level.
Oh,
and
God.
and it looks like it stepped over it, no problem, from private property onto public land. And, these tracks were about 17 inches long by 8 inches wide at the toe splay. Not sure if it's the one that I saw, but more than likely they come over from public property, and then after we had our sighting with them, they probably ran back that same direction. They're smart enough to know that there's less presence and less people pressure on these private properties. I'm pretty sure if the deer figure it out, you ever notice during hunting season, the day before hunting season opens up, you see herds of deer, and then all of a sudden hunting season and you don't see them anymore. And a lot of them head for private properties where there's less human pressure. I'm sure the Bigfoot knows where to be too. But anyways, a storm was rolling in. It was getting dark. We finally had to leave. And so that was my second sighting. This one wasn't as massive as the first one, even though that first one was a 1/4 mile away and this one was only 35 feet away. I could tell that this 7.5 Bigfoot was smaller than my first sighting in 2018.
Do you think he learned his lesson? Man, the last time I watched humans pee, they tracked me 2 miles through the woods. I'll never do that again.
Yeah, I think something's wrong with me. I think I've gotten desensitized to the fear for some reason, because most people see something like that, a monster coming to life. They don't, a normal person would have stayed in the car and split. Instead, I'm diving out and running after the damn thing. So
I have several friends that react to that just like you, Kelly. It's amazing. I had one of them that saw one go running across this open area in the woods. And he's like, well, that thing's only like 40 feet away from me. It's cutting right across the road. Zoom, running through the woods, going that way. I'm going after him. So he goes running after him. And it abruptly stops and just stands behind this huge stump and looks at him. And he's looking at it closer now, and he's like, that thing's got a snout. That's not a Bigfoot. I'm turning around now. He got a couple of pictures and beat ass out of there. So yeah, sometimes it gets the best of us. When I was up there in September with my buddies, we spotted what we thought was one up on a ridge line because it looked just like I was seeing something that looked like a black cone shaped head. And then when William looked up there, he saw something brown and furry. And I went, well, get your camera on. What are you going to do? Oh, I'll run up there and see if it moves. Well, of course, it moved way before I ever got up there because I'm pitifully slow even on level ground, much less trying to run up a hill. So it just probably fell over laughing and then slowly ambled away. But whatever it was, it actually moved. So we still don't know what it was. Oh my God. Well, some other things you managed to catch quite a bit of interesting stuff, and one of them that I liked is where you were out doing one of your roadside drives and let's talk Bigfoot while we're driving and filming the road, and you come around this corner and there's this big berry bush there, and there's something eating the berries, and you're like, whoa, what's that? And you pull over, and of course the Kelly Shaw, I'm going to jump out with a camera and go running right to where it is and film it right now. I don't care if it's 20 feet tall. And
Well,
yeah,
if
you're right in the damn bush, like 3 seconds after it was there, looking for tracks, trying to film it.
I did not follow it into the forest. I stopped at the tree line and then realized that it would not be smart to run into the woods after it.
Yeah. Well, what was the forest like? 10 feet beyond the berry bush that you did go into and check out?
The berry bushes, it was at the tree line for sure. Yeah, Thinker Thunker did a breakdown of that Bigfoot, and that Bigfoot was that Bigfoot had that berry bush pulled down so it could easily pick berries, I'm guessing. So yeah, instead of climbing it had it ripped it down, and then when we come around the corner in the vehicle, it let it go, thump. After our hike to service some game cameras about 35 miles back in Sasquatch Canyon on the drive out, as we round this bend just left of center, a black creature hides behind this tree, an animal or a creature. We didn't identify it. We'll show it to you again a couple of times. We also slow it down a couple of times, but I got out and went and looked for it. And I could hear it and kind of see the black movement deep in the bush. Now there it is again. The tree that it hides behind is just shaking. And this tree's like 9 feet, maybe 10 feet tall. Looks like it was shoving it over. There's berries in this tree.
We just saw a big black
animal or creature. He hid behind this tree as we rounded the corner in our car.
Look at the berries in this tree. This is where he was at.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I saw him.
Did you get down?
I don't know. I could hear and see him moving back there. I don't know if the camera got him though. He's up here eating these.
Okay, this is crazy. A lot of people don't know about this, but not even a half a mile from where that all happened, and it's getting dark and it's raining, we got a flat tire. So Jenny and I was out in the
What is
dark.
this flat tire thing happening? all
Hey,
the-
you go off-roading as much as we do, you get a lot of flat tires. You better have a compressor and a bunch of fix-a-flats, and I even have an extra spare now after I got the 2 flat tires up in Oregon. But yeah, so her and I is in the dark in the rain, and a half a mile away, we just saw this what we suspect may have been a Bigfoot. We weren't quite sure. We only caught it for a second. We're so happy that we had a dash camera that could go back and review the footage and have someone like Thinker Thunker that's an excellent video breakdown expert to go in there and
Well, here's my analysis. If that was a bear, that was a freakishly big bear. So I'm
yeah,
leaning towards Sasquatch just because of the size of it.
yeah, and so we had someone to be able to do the analysis. But whatever it was, we knew that was only a half a mile away, and we're in the dark in the rain changing a freaking flat tire. So that was unnerving.
Yeah, if you had a little better relations with it, it could be like, "Hey, bud, can you hold the end of the truck up here while we're changing the tire for us?"
That's right. Wouldn't even need to pull out the jack.
No, you can just grab it with one hand, hold it up while you're busy changing the tire on it. It'd be nice and easy.
Uh-huh.
I had somebody down south joking about that. Like, I wish I was on better terms with the Sasquatch. I need to re-roof the house. And they could just put those, pallets of shingles right up on there without even needing a forklift or anything. They just pick them up, throw them up for me.
I do believe
Sasquatch
that
roofing.
I do believe that I got my first dash camera in like 2015, and it just drove me nuts that I didn't have one leading up to that, because studying Bigfoot sighting reports, over half the reports happen from
Driving.
the front seat of a vehicle. I mean, not necessarily crossing the road from you, but like my 2 sightings, I was in a vehicle. The one 2018, I was in the passenger seat. The one just a few months ago, I was in the driver's seat. And then this one with the berry bush back in Sasquatch Canyon, from the vehicle again. So I think I had only had that dash cam for a year when that happened. But yeah, the expense of Bigfooting, my list of equipment and places I want a Bigfoot is much bigger than my budget. So I just pick away at it, and after that day, that dash cam's worth its weight in gold. People are more likely to see a Bigfoot from the front of their seat. So I always try to keep one rolling in the car, because you're more than likely going to see one from the car than out on these hikes. And
Right.
and there's this misconception, people will there will be a sighting and people are like, isn't there a busy road right there? And I'm like, well, I don't think Bigfoot read the rule book that it can't go near a busy road. And I don't think there's an animal on the planet, especially in the lower 48, that can live its life without having to cross a road at one point in time to get the resources it needs. So and Bigfoot, I'm sorry, Bigfoot's got to have a large territory. A wolverine will have like a 50 square mile area, and a large wolverine will weigh 50 pounds, the average maybe 30, 35 pounds. They need a 50 square mile area. Okay,
Yeah.
now you take an 800-pound Bigfoot and his family. How big's their territory? They're going to have to cross a lot of roads. So people need to throw these stereotypes out. Bigfoot don't read your rule book.
The other thing is that they're highly curious, and I've heard several reports of ones in certain areas that have a fairly well-trafficked road, and they got a favorite spot where they build a blind, and they'll just sit there and watch the traffic on the road for half the day. And if you know they're there, every time you drive by, you can look and see if they're sitting there watching the road. And oftentimes they are, because yeah, they've already been up and scouted these spots and went, why is there a blind here? There's no game trail. It's
Well,
right next to this road.
Well, they're curious creatures, and they watch and they learn, and they watch and learn from people. My uncle had a Bigfoot sighting where the Bigfoot unzipped the tent that him and his cousins were in. And how do you learn how to unzip? From watching.
Yeah.
And then I here locally, about 30 miles south of where I live in Big Cottonwood Canyon, about 30 years ago, this family had a Bigfoot sighting there, but the first sighting that I recall, that some of the kids up in the top room of the cabin, they heard the outhouse door slam, and I think they were all like teenagers, and the parents let them use the cabin for the weekend, and they knew that everybody was in the cabin, you know, and so they're looking out the window like, who went in the outhouse? And a couple of seconds later, it opens up and a Bigfoot comes walking out. Well, how'd that Bigfoot learn to open that outhouse door? It's from hiding and observing. And then like that Rogue River one where it come into the lady's home, you know, it learned how to open the door. And I've also heard of instances where the Bigfoot has unzipped a tent and taken stuff out of the cooler. The Mongolian Rim incident with Mitch Wade, where it's on Finding Bigfoot and everything, where the Mongolian monster got inside of his cooler.
Yeah.
You know, that's that they are smart, they're curious, and they watch and they learn.
I can attest firsthand that they do that, because when we were doing our stakeout on the Blackfoot River, they would come into camp and just raid the coolers.
Right.
They'd open them up, take something in there that was yummy. Never take all of it. They always have to leave some, because apparently we can't count. So as long as there's some, we don't think any of it's missing. So
Yeah,
they'll
and
never take all of it. They'll leave some.
And a bear doesn't carefully open up a cooler and pick
Hell no,
around
they
it.
just knock it over and they eat everything and they make a mess and they scatter packages all over. We had one where we had 4 pork chops that had gone bad. They were still in the package, hadn't even been opened, and they turned gray. So we were going to haul them out of camp and get rid of them, because stinky attract bears, right? So that night it was nice and cold, so it's not putting off any stank. We have them wrapped in a regular white plastic bag with the end of it underneath it, just laying on the ground. So I get up in the morning, it's in exactly the same position with the end underneath it, laying on the ground, and I go to pick it up and it's too light. I'm like, what the hell? So I open up the package and I look inside, and something had made a nice slit along one side of the plastic wrapping, had pulled 2 of the pork chops out, left the other 2 pork chops, carefully put the plastic back over it so it looked exactly the same as the way they had found it. No animal is going to do that. If they're going to eat it, they're going to just tear it open and eat all 4 of them. They're not going to try and conceal that they took 2 of them. They're not going to leave any there to, like, so you can't count. You don't know that 2 of the 4 are missing, right? So they can, humans can't count. And then the other thing, is, who the hell is going to take rotting gray pork chops and then carefully conceal the theft of 2 rotting gray pork chops? So it's really obvious who was doing this, but the lengths they go to conceal it. And they were sneaking into camp and ripping off food from our cooler so often I had to take my cooler and put it right next to the tent under the rain fly. And it didn't stop them. One of them woke me up. I could feel the top of the cooler bapping me on the side of the tent, and something was rummaging around in it. Something was leaning on the side of the tent, so I rolled over and smacked at one, and whatever it was just backed up, and the cooler top dropped again, and everything was nice and silent. So I don't know what exactly I smacked, but it maybe was a Bigfoot that was trying to raid my cooler. It got the hint anyway. A pitiful human punch doesn't hurt them, but it was enough to go, oh yeah, I woke the human up. That's why he's got the cooler literally right next to him. So if I'm messing with it, I'll wake him up.
I have a question for you. I want to discuss something in your neck of the woods out there near the Missoula area. A couple of years ago, a woman got a hold of me and told me that, her dad's retired wildfire chief or something like that, and he was based out of Missoula. And she said that he and his guys that he managed had some Bigfoot stories out near St. Regis Pass on that Highway 90 that goes off towards Coeur d'Alene, but
Okay.
somewhere on those dirt roads near St. Regis Pass, I believe some years they would set up a fire camp there, and that's where they would stage their operations to fight fires and stuff. And she told me that I might want to check that area. And she told me that she would have her dad get a hold of me with some of his stories, which he never did. And I followed up with her, and she's like, I've been trying to get him to get a hold of you. But I was just wondering if you've been Bigfooting in that area, or have heard of any sighting reports between Missoula and the St. Regis Pass.
Have you driven between Missoula and Coeur d'Alene on that road?
I've never been there.
It's a 176-mile long mountain valley, and there's no side roads. There's like maybe a little fire access road or something. There's two tiny little villages that got a population of about 30 people between Missoula and Coeur d'Alene, with 176 miles of mountain range and forest in between.
Well, I see that there's a dirt road that is pretty close to St. Regis that goes from St. Regis across the Idaho border, and it ends up in St. Marie's. It goes through Avery, Hoyt, Herrick. I don't know. Maybe that isn't a dirt road. It's
well,
the
it
282.
could be that. Yeah, if it's 2-lane, it could be something that's in use. And the other thing is some of those roads in the mountains, like you can only use them in the summer. They're closed.
Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to know if you've ever heard of any Bigfoot activity anywhere in
No, it
those
wouldn't
areas.
surprise me at all. But everywhere around here, we've got mountain ranges that are full of Sasquatch, and we constantly get, it's to the point where I don't even bother to keep track of the reports like you do. You've done a better job. You probably got, as a matter of fact, didn't you do a video on the John Stoner encounter here in Missoula in 1896?
Yes, I did.
There you go.
I did.
You covered it. And by the way, folks, that's right here where I live, 5 miles outside of town. Him and his horse got jumped by an angry Sasquatch that wanted to mug him for some reason. And it was 125 years ago.
For some reason, you guys get some of the most aggressive Bigfoot in Montana. And I mean, there must be something wrong with me. I like the aggressive Bigfoot sightings. I feel like the aggressive ones may be easier to get on camera. I mean, it hasn't been working out for me so far, but I get excited and I want to go. And I'm sure Jenny's like, what in the hell's wrong with you? Yeah, a Bigfoot just beat the hell out of a guy. Let's go. And
he's probably all tired out now. We should be safe.
Yeah,
well, Kevin pointed out the same thing when he was over on the west side of the Bitterroot Mountains. All the Sasquatch over there, crabby as crap. And then you get over here in the next range over in the Sapphire Mountains, and they seem to be just the opposite, where they're all just curious and halfway friendly. And then you go into some other areas, and they're like, oh, human, squish them with a boulder. So I think it kind of depends on the area that you're in, and also the person that's there, how they're going to react to you. Because there's some areas where humans get out, we don't want you around, and there's other areas where I think it's case by case. It's like they're gonna react to you based on what they sense from you and what you seem to be doing.
Well, I have a theory. I think the Bigfoot have to be aggressive in some of these areas in Montana, where different parts have large grizzly populations. The Bigfoot's
that's all over Western Montana.
Yeah, he's got to be tougher and meaner than the grizzly bear, and in the Bitterroot Forest on the border of Idaho and Montana, where the bombing incident happened 135 years ago, and his partner got killed. Teddy Roosevelt writes about it. Well, we found that location. Took us several years, but we found where it's at, and we've camped there and everything. Well, when Lewis and Clark come through that area, they them and their crew, they would not go down by the rivers. They stayed. They took the crappy road, the high road. Not easy to travel. It's easier to travel down by the river, but they stayed up high on the mountain walls to avoid the thick, raunchy grizzly bears down by the rivers. So I'm like, if the grizzly bear problem back then was that bad, it makes sense to me why the Bigfoot was so aggressive, having to deal with and run these bears off.
Yep. And also think about what that's going to result in, just because of the natural pressure, and you've got 1,000-pound grizzlies running around. Well, the alpha male in the troop needs to be whipped needs to be able to whip a 1,000-pound grizzly's ass. Is
Right.
essentially what it comes down to. So it's going to lend toward, you're probably not going to have alpha males that are 8 feet tall. They're probably going to be more like 10 or 12 feet tall, so they can whoop a 1,000-pound grizzly's ass. See what I'm saying? So
Right.
that sort of is a pressure toward making them larger in certain areas. If they got more giant prey animals and more other dangerous predators in the area that are large size, they have to be larger in order to deal with them.
Well, science has already shown that mammals get larger the further north you go. The mountain lions, the moose, the bears get bigger. So you're further north of us. The mid North Montana Sasquatch are going to be bigger than the Utah Sasquatch, and it's like you get down into Arizona, the northern mountains of the Mogollon Rim, Tonto National Forest and stuff. I mean, 8,000 feet elevation, you think Arizona and you're like, what? Bigfoot lives there? But we went there to
Yeah, they do.
investigate the area, and these are high mountain areas, thick forest, and just chock full of elk and deer. And the sightings of the Mogollon monster, they describe something that's smaller than here. The creature is usually about 7 feet tall at the biggest, a lighter brown color, not as thick, not as robust. But you start looking at the descriptions, and people capture them on video and photos once in a while.
Yep.
They get bigger the further north you go, just like the mountain lions and the bear and the moose. They also get bigger the further north you go. So it makes sense that you guys have some of the biggest Sasquatch in the lower 48.
Yep. And you go north of us up in Canada and you find ones that are even bigger. Blaine Tyler, he caught that one, Lord of the Sasquatch Dunes on video, where he was just filming this gravel pit area. And there's one down at the end of the gravel pit watching them. And he caught it on video. And then when he came back and tried to figure out where it was standing and measure it, it scared the living hell out of him, because he found the tree it was standing right next to, and its head was up around 16 feet. And this thing was built like the Hulk. And he didn't even want to go back to that area after that. Like, way too scary. But there are big ones in parts of the country you wouldn't expect them to be. When I had Robert Kreider on, he was showing video where they were chasing a really big alpha male around in this lowland thicket area. And they had followed his tracks, and if I recall correctly, they're 22, 23 inches right into this thicket. And they had him kind of stuck in there. He was too big to get out of it without making noise and giving away where he was exactly. And then there was a smaller 8-footer that was in the next thicket over that was making a big racket to get their attention. So they'd go over and pay attention to him, and the big one could make a getaway. But they weren't falling for it. And finally, Rob held his camera up as high as he could above his head. And right as he was holding it up, the big one in the thicket poked his head up to take a look if he was still over there. So he caught the top of his head looking at him. But Jesus, really huge Sasquatch. And what he says down there, mostly, the ones like you're talking about, they are around that size. But you also get these gigantic alpha males, and it seems like they'll leave the female and the kids in a secluded area where they're not liable to be found, and then they go roam around, and they might not come back every 4 or 5 days, every once a week, something like that. They'll come back through the area and check up, and you'll see their tracks again, and then they're gone again. So just because you're in an area where in general they're smaller doesn't mean they're all going to be smaller. Same thing with the folk area down there where William Lunsford is. You get a lot of the southern wood boogers, usually reported 7, 8 feet tall. But those guys have found monstrously huge tracks down in their area. They haven't been able to catch any of them on video yet, but they know there's some huge adults down there. And generally it's because they're so good at hiding and they're so sneaky. It doesn't matter how big they are. You might find their tracks, but you're almost never going to get them on video. You just can't trick them. Another thing that you filmed, that speaking of really giant ones, where you got that one across the canyon from you, and then you guys had to come back and try and find that spot, and you had Derek and everybody out there with calling each other, are you in the right spot? Yeah, no, go a little bit more to the right. And you're trying to get this comparison and everything. And man, whatever you caught there, it wasn't there when you came back again. And it was friggin' huge.
Yeah, we couldn't recreate that. We couldn't find a trick of light or shadows or stump. But if you look in the video, the thing's eyes are blinking and its mouth is moving, and I know the creature's watching us, and they're a master of stealth, and one of the or master of camo, and one of the best ways to stay camouflaged is to hold still, but it was still moving its head and eyes and mouth around a little bit. Yeah, that was an amazing investigation, because we got there like a day or two right after the witness saw it. Let's see, Clint Richens got a hold of us and said, hey, this guy I know got a hold of me, knows I'm into Bigfoot, and he just saw one. I mean, he got a hold of me like an hour or two after it happened, and the guy and his girlfriend saw it just as the sun was going down, so it was already dark when he got a hold of me. So we come back at the next opportunity, and Clint was also friends with BFRO's investigator for Utah, and I think he also does some stuff in Idaho or whatever. He does the investigations for BFRO. What is his name? Todd Strong. So anyway, he showed up at the same time as us and interviewed the witness and everything. And I think he misunderstood the witness, and he takes off the mountain. I think he was trying to beat us to the punch to find the evidence, and
Went the
and
wrong direction.
he took off the mountain the wrong way. And then we sat and chatted with the witness for a little while longer, and I understood what the witness was talking about, so we went the right way. Well, this is how it all went down. Him and his girlfriend were fishing down on the Lost Creek Reservoir, and after he was done fishing, they decided to just go up a random draw and hike around a little bit near the reservoir. And it wasn't there on the way in that they hiked, but they got back into the draw, and what got them to come back out and finish their hike early is they could hear a deer in distress, just making its screams and all that. And so they started coming back, and they found the deer. It was laying right where they had hiked past earlier, and it was a doe trying to give birth, and it was laying there in distress. Well, this kid, he grew up on a ranch, and he's helped animals give birth. So he got down there trying to pull the fetus out, and he said the fetus had probably been deceased a couple of days because the skin was sloughing off, and he could smell that it was bad. So, and he couldn't get it out, so he knew this deer was going to die. So he laid up at the head of the deer, petting it, trying to comfort it in its last moments of life. And then his girlfriend noticed it up on the hill. She's, oh my gosh, what is that? And they look up, and standing up near the ridge line about 70 yards away next to a tree, the Bigfoot's down staring at him. Maybe the screams of the doe got it to come in. And so anyway, when we showed up to do the investigation, everything's just like they told us the night before. The deer's there. We can see that, it almost deceased. Well, anyway, Todd takes off the mountain the wrong way for whatever reason. And then we got the witness to put us in the location, and we get up to, before we even get to where the Bigfoot was standing, we started finding tracks. We found a bedding spot, saw where it put its hand down a couple of times, measuring tracks, measuring the handprint, right where he said it was. And when that Bigfoot noticed them staring at it, it walked right up over the ridge line. I don't know, 4 or 5 steps, and then disappeared. So all the evidence backed
Well, and
up.
you
exactly
found
what
its
the witness was
little
saying.
nest laydown spot there along their travel route. It was laying there under cover, watching them when they came in.
Yeah, more than likely that's what it looked like. So anyway, when we were putting the videos together and stuff, we noticed what looked like this gigantic Bigfoot from across this draw, watching us investigate its sighting. And so we kept coming up. We come up several times over the next couple of weeks, trying to time it right, the right time of day, so the lighting conditions and everything would be the same. And we just couldn't debunk it. We were never able to recreate what was standing there the day we were doing the investigation. So we may have very well caught the Bigfoot that they saw the day or two before.
Oh, I think you did.
Just right, almost to the top of that, just right underneath that. Of that yellowish, lighter colored bush? Yeah, but about halfway up to that tree. There's a little bit of out top. So it wasn't a call at the top of that point? No. And what did it do? Which way did it go? It just turned, it came, it took about, what looked like to me about 2 steps into that opening, and then went straight up over the top. So it took 2 steps that way? This way. Up to the left. And then straight up and over the top. So probably right over the top, so either right over the top or it went behind that big rounded bush? Exactly. You want me to stay down here? No, we can go up there. I don't care. Okay, this is the deer. This is the doe that was experiencing some trauma and actually gave birth to a stillborn. So we were right. Yeah, we didn't even get through it. I want to go up there. You want to go? Okay. Want to go up there? Or do you want me to stay down here and give you a comparison? May have had more than one. No, may have another fawn in it. Can you hike up there? Yeah. Because he's probably the tallest one here. He's okay. And then, yeah, and then you can tell me. Okay. Yeah. Think we can yell? Yeah, because we don't got both there. I'm going to walk to my car. We got to get that. We ought to walk up there and see if we can walk up behind it. I think we need to do a lot of documentation of the area. We'd walk back up in. I really should. And the whole time I got up in here, we were about 30 minutes before. Well, when we first walked up in here. About what time was this? When I seen this, it was about 30 to 45 minutes before dark. Okay. And we'd walk back up in here probably around 6:37. I should walk back up in a little ways and was just hanging out. The whole time I was in this, it just didn't feel right. So it probably followed you out. It probably knew and just kind of followed you. It was just an uneasy feeling. And so we come down, we were sitting there, and it was actually about, I was probably only no more than 100 yards up, not even that far, 50 yards when I heard the scream. I'm like, no. Scream from the dog? I think it was the dog in pain, is what I think. And I listened, and I heard some sheep. I'm like, I hear sheep. And then it did it again. And I thought it was a lion killing a deer, because that's what it said. Because it sounded like that big doe bleed, like a dying rabbit almost. Yeah. And I told her, I'm like, that's a lion. Let's get the hell out of here. I don't want to be right here if there's a lion killing a deer. Yes. And I come down the trail on the other side of the tree. I come right here, and that thing stood up from me to that bush. And I seen that fawn hang out, and I thought it was a lion on the back of that thing. It scared the living hell out of me. So, but it stood up, and then that's when I seen her had that stillborn baby in there. And she was all but done. God, she's... Yeah. That's too bad. So we stood here for 20 minutes saying, like, what the hell did I didn't have my knife on me. I would have just slit her throat. Yeah. She was done. Yeah. And so I'm like, well, try to pull the baby out. And I only got, it was just the tip of the head and the feet that was hanging out. And I got it out about yay far. And then the legs started pulling off. I'm like, I'm done. This is freaking nasty. It stinks. It was already. But it smelled like the baby had been dead for like probably a day or two in there because it was still. Yeah. It was just nasty smelling. So I don't know. She had gotten down this far trying to have it or something. Because she had to. Because we walked up. But we didn't walk up this trail. We walked up right here. So if she was laying right there, I don't know how the hell I would have missed her coming up again. Yeah. Oh yeah. Just right here a little bit farther up and just kind of stumbled her way down. But probably. I really should just go put that drone up. I could have been up and down this thing 10 times by the time they made it up. Well, you brought it. Yeah, go use a battery on it. We're on property you can use it on. Yeah, you might as well. Yeah. You get back up here farther and it's just thick and shady. And oh, yeah. Well, take a walk up in there for a bit. Oh. They're bending, they're looking.
They're bending over.
They're bending over looking at the ground.
Looking at something.
They're totally watching the ridge.
They're up there just.
Yeah.
So
I don't even see them. So are they right where I showed them?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I thought you were pointing on this side of the juniper. They're on this side.
Up on the very top.
It happened on the right side. He was probably walked along the ridge watching you guys for a while, or watching the deer.
She was probably more interested in what was going on right here.
Derek's sending Squawk up. Or Squawk. He has an aerial view of the area, and hopefully if it's still hanging out, we might catch it.
Well, it depends on if there's a resident around here. If that one like live around here, yeah. And he's protecting his other.
God, I want to go up there and see what they found.
You walked right up there. You said looked around it. I was just looking for any other activity. They're in the area. Well, I noticed is that what. You guys ever found a whole lot of stuff in here?
We've gotten one. We got a Sasquatch-shaped creature that stepped out of some trees, looked up at it, and stepped back in.
Oh, really?
It's shaped like it, but we didn't get anything definitive to be able to scream that's what it was. But it looks a hell of a lot like one, and it's moving too. Right above a canyon, people keep having sightings. Yeah. Right up at the top in some cover and stuff that it stepped out and back in. We were hoping they'd be more curious of it than afraid, so. Looks like we found where the doe may have been bedding down, that died giving birth down there
Probably
by
spooked,
Mike and Curtis.
probably spooked by the witness Curtis coming down out of here. It heard him coming, and she's vulnerable. Probably got up and tried getting out of Dodge.
Whatever happened, she screamed for 10 minutes before he found her.
So what caught our attention here is it looked like a bedding spot. Soft,
Yeah.
dirt, even kind of looked like a print here. But if you look at it further, what you're looking at is probably the hind legs of a deer laying down. You see some hoof prints in there, and this doe was giving birth. So she was probably bedded down here to actually give birth, and had to get up and move.
We're getting a call up front, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure what spooked it. Let's go.
All right, Brody found something. Okay, because back this direction's where the Bigfoot was that Curtis sighted 3 days ago. This is one of the quickest places that we've ever gotten into a location.
how it is?
Yep.
See the, if you get closer, you can see the fingers.
People are gonna have a hard time seeing that.
You know what? When they climb something steep like this, they put their hands down sometimes. I don't care if people are having a hard time seeing it. I'm gonna film it. I ain't walking past the friggin' handprint. Check that out.
Found probably the deer's bedding spot.
I know. Derek don't care about the handprint.
Oh, I do.
Just kidding.
I know it came from this direction.
Check this out. That is a weird print. I'm not sure what it is. But look. See this? See that?
Yeah.
That's something. Look at this, that.
You know, all I gotta say is that handprint,
going this
badass.
way,
That's
too.
probably one of
Yeah.
the best
And
handprints
that
we've ever
definitely
had.
looks like a
Look
hill.
how splayed that is. What is that?
And it looks like a hill.
Like, look how big that is. What I'm looking at though, do you see that, Kelly? Look, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it's just kind of like, it's not what I'm normally seeing. You know what I mean?
There. Oh, you got a foot?
Well, there's my boot. My boot's 13 inches long. So,
It's got a splay of 8, 10.
it's a good splay if that is indeed a
What it
toe.
is.
It's just not good enough, you know what I mean?
Well, I know they've been finding some good stuff up on the top.
I mean, here's something right here. See that? Something's been coming through here.
Something with flat feet.
Yeah, see that? That's a pretty wide foot.
I can also see toes up here. Like it stepped right here. That's a good sized footprint if that's the whole footprint, and it really is crushed the sagebrush.
Well, like it did with this grass. This grass actually is all matted down, all broken off and matted down right where that other print you guys just...
I think it came from here. Here's another one. Right here.
He walked this line right here.
This is another footprint.
He's even smashed down some of this milkweed.
Or impression, sorry.
Look at this.
Wow.
This hill's full of milkweed. I mean, deer and elk just love sagebrush, and then the milkweed grows right into it, and people can eat milkweed. You know, hell, the Bigfoot may be able to eat the milkweed and the sagebrush. Who knows? Sagebrush, if it's the big sagebrush, it has 4 times the protein levels as any other type of range grasses or range vegetation. It's another footprint that Brody found. This is between the sighting location, the deer, and the Bigfoot that the guy actually seen up on the mountain. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see the toes up here and the hill back here, but this is a 17-inch footprint. My boot's 13 inches long. I've got it right by the hill now, and it looks to us, this is about the 3rd or 4th footprint that we've found so far on the hillside between the deer and where he spotted it, and it's congruent with the other ones. I mean, I think we're dealing with one that has at least a 17-inch footprint. We have found 7 impressions working our way up here that look like 17-inch or better.
Coming from where? Up this way.
Zigzagging up this way, we've
This way.
right up to this spot.
Coming from down there.
Below it,
Yes, between the dead deer and here, and one handprint. One of the best handprints that we've seen.
You know
Yeah.
you remember where that was? Show me when we go down.
We can work our way down, and
Yeah, show me when we go down.
they're looking for some more up here too. Did you guys see any impressions or anything up there?
Where you're standing, there's a, it's been So dry. Let's see if we're looking for evidence of a Bigfoot sighting that just happened recently this week.
A couple days ago.
I've already thrown the helicopter up here once.
I don't know if I did a 360 up here. I probably should have. Pan out. Let him check out that.
Just a second, I'm zooming in on a dark spot that I see across the way. That's the dark spot that I see. It's worth zooming in on. Kind of stands out from the shadows.
Look at this.
That's the dark spot that I see. It's worth zooming in on. Kind of stands out from the shadows.
We just went through the same thing here with the piece of random video we got up in Patty Canyon a few years ago. And we've been going up to that exact same spot, same time of day for years, and different times of the year too. And you know, we know it was filmed in like September. So this year when I had the team here with me, we went up there in September, same time of day, same time of year, same light conditions. Let's see if that huge Bigfoot shaped shadow that's 12 feet tall is there. No, it's not there. And the other thing is, you know, since subsequent viewings of the same piece of video over and over again, Jeff, who filmed it, actually caught 4 of them. The one standing up, peeking around behind the tree, Mr. Big, that was the obvious one, but there's 3 other ones. And we've been up there enough times and looked at the video. It's like none of those objects are there. Snubs don't get up and walk away.
Right.
You know. So yeah, you know, I tried to debunk myself originally too, and went, nah, it's a trick of shadow. And then after going up there over and over and over and over again, it's like the shadow isn't appearing again. You know?
Right.
After like 4 or 5 years of doing this over and over again, that shadow ain't there, guys. Whatever that was, it got up and done walked away after we filmed it, you know. So yeah, and that's one of the things that very few of the researchers bother to do is actually go back to the same spot, take comparison video. And sometimes you go through a nightmare. You may be up there, you know, half a dozen times trying to set it up again and find the right spot and get there at the right time of day and the right weather conditions. And man, it's not easy. You could be out in the middle of nowhere, not on a trail. And it's like, oh, now I got to go out in this 5,000 acres and find that 2 square foot spot I was standing on when I filmed this originally, and do it the same time of day, same light conditions, same weather conditions. But one time where you did this, you weren't doing a comparison thing.
Make sure that you're kind to everyone. Safety first, last, and always. Pay it forward. Don't be mean to people if you don't have to be. Don't flip off the mountain giant. Don't poke Dogman with a stick. Don't punt the puck, would you? And for God's sake, whatever you do not hug the Wookiee.